Okay, I think we can get started. So once again, good morning, colleagues, and welcome to the fourth webinar, where we are going to learn about creating a winning pitch, which will be very significant, especially in the coming weeks. Thank you for recording, Rex. I just had to quickly check. So before we begin, we just want to, on behalf of the Africa Tech Startup Forum, I would like to welcome everyone. And we would also like to recognize and thank our sponsors, the African Development Bank. We'd like to thank COFAC and the Innovation Lab for making this program possible. And we would also like to express our gratitude to our implementation partners, Ndarama Works, Catalyze, Korea Startup Forum, and UVU, our training partner. Teamwork does make the dream work. So I see more people are joining. Okay. So today, colleagues, we are honored to have Rizo, who will be taking us through the session today. So Rizo is the founder, a little bit about him, is the founder of the Garrison, a dedicated incubator and ecosystem builder for foreign entrepreneurs in Korea, which is aimed at globalizing the the South Korean ecosystem. He is also a chapter director of the startup Grind Soul and the founder of the Foreign Entrepreneurs Club in Korea. So in a nutshell, colleagues, we are in good company with an experienced entrepreneur who works with entrepreneurs, not only in South Korea, but also abroad. He was just quickly mentioning that he spent quite some time with entrepreneurs in Senegal and with other African entrepreneurs. So without any waste of time, I'm going to hand you over to Rizo to take you through the session. Over to you, Rizo.
Thank you so much, Precious. I'll quickly share my screen and open it up. Okay, everyone can see the screen? All good? Okay, all right.
Good.
So I like to keep my session very interactive, especially, since it's about how to pitch. So I really like to keep it interactive. So personally, I've done a lot of pitch deck consulting, and I've been consulting a couple of successful fundraising pitches, also competition. And I myself kind of pitch very often. So maybe I could provide you the most practical experience. At the same time, I really understand the foreigner point of view in South Korean startup ecosystem. At the same time, Korean point of view in reviewing foreigners, pitch deck or startups or networks. So feel free to ask me any questions. Over a time, I'm gonna save a lot of time for you to ask me any kind of questions at the end. So you can jump in between, but also you can ask me later. Okay? All right. So how to pitch? It's small world, but big meaning. I would say. I believe pitching is like bragging about your child, right? I'm currently in Malaysia, and I've done some business matching sessions, and about like 5 startups came up to me, and they pitched about their ideas. We had 15 minutes per session, and for 15 minutes per session, they've been spending 15 minutes literally just about pitching their ideas. Do I remember what they do? Little bit, yes. But have we got out any outcomes or follow-up meetings? No. Why? Because they've been bragging about their child too long, right? Human nature itself prefer to talk rather than listen. So pitching is a kind of art of well-balanced matter of communication. And pitching is, we can also just define it as a 5-minute pitch, but there are diverse type of pitches. So when it comes to a global pitching, what is really important is localization, I believe. First of all, generally we have different language, and next we have different culture, and lastly, limited time to chat. First of all, in South Korea, if I tell you about difference in culture per se, most of the startup due diligence is done by reviewing the text, right? So they need to file in report to the investment committee, and they spend much more time reading it than listening. So in this type of evaluation culture, they tend to put in a lot of text within the pitch deck. So when they use a lot of text within the pitch deck, usually evaluators, juries, or the partners don't really have time to read or even listen. They kind of can't get to lose focus. They end up having nothing about you at the end. So you really have to consider that we have a different culture, also different language, right? Most of you might be English as a first language. Some of you might have French as the first language. And Korean is the first language. So as Korean, we study English from the first grade of elementary school until the graduation of high school during the older mandatory education courses. Koreans do not speak English so well. I'll be one of the rare ones you guys get to me. Because we're so shy, right? So they'll be having tough time communicating, but also they'll be also having tough time listening to your pitch. So when I say different language, you should put into a consideration about the terminologies or about the region, about your market, right? And since we have limited time to chat, let's say you guys are arriving on the 3rd of December, leaving on the 5th or 6th, that means you can barely have a follow-up meeting, right? So you really have to try to put in the essence of your business so you can have as much time as possible to discuss about further plan or follow up Zoom calls. Another thing is that on the startup and investor perspective, technical understanding and tolerability about your ideas or your product or solution, it could vary a lot because some people are expert in AI but may not be the expert in healthcare. Some people might be an expert in healthcare but may not be such an expert in manufacturing. So it has a different perspective each by each. Also, this is a typical problem that I get to experience over time is that we have a different valuation. So if I go to a global pitching ceremony with the different ecosystem players, everyone tells me they're pre-seed or seed stage startup, and their valuation verifies a lot. So, for instance, in South Korea, average pre-seed funding would vary from about 100K to 200K, and I'm not sure how much pre-seed funding would be average in South Africa. But personally, when I was in Senegal, it was roughly from 50K, 20K range, right? So different valuation means that people might get to have a misunderstanding about your stage. They might consider, oh, you're way earlier than pre-seed, or maybe you're much more mature. So you have to understand that we have a different spectrum on this. Pricing, GDP, spending pattern differentiation is that as a foreign startup, if you're planning to expand to Korean market, you really also have to consider the pricing strategies, the Korean GDP spendings, or GDP composite, so you can consider the localized market size or the spending patterns, etc., etc. Investment process is also very difficult. South Korea, if you're a South Korean company that gets to be invested by foreign investor, literally it takes at least 2 months by law, because we have a lot of process in between. Other way around, South Korean startup investing to an overseas startups, South Korean accelerator or investor investing on overseas startup, that also takes a lot of time, a lot of different system, currency, entity locations, a lot of things to consider about. So you need to have a pre-planned idea what to offer, what to suggest, and what to discuss. when I say pre-plan, I'm not telling you to make an airtight script, what to say on this moment. No, just have a rough idea, rough brainstorming, so that you can pick it up when you need for it. Different evaluation standard also comes up. So due diligence model is very different. South Korea, the appetite for the deal could be highly limited to high value adding technologies like deep tech, AI. Often we have a very traditional manufacturing facilities here. So those kind of deal appetite might be much more preferred, which means the evaluation standard can differ as well. So putting all this into a consideration, you have to build a understandable, interesting, and fun and localized offer. When I say localized offer, I just want to ask a quick question. How many of you are trying to make a fundraising during this trip in South Korea? None? Maybe none? Maybe few?
Yeah, here.
One? Okay.
Please repeat the question if you don't mind.
Okay. How many of you are planning to fundraise in South Korea during your trip?
Yeah, I think
Fundraising,
we're
okay.
into investors.
Should we?
I'm ready and willing. Sure.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I think all of us.
All of you guys, huh? Yeah, because fundraising in Korea is pretty hard. Guys, can you type in the questions on the chat? Yeah, on the chat. Like respond on the chat. Me. That will be much more.
Apologies. Yeah. No apologies, Rizzo.
So yeah. So if you are fundraising, you have to be very and customize the localized offering, right? What can investor take from investing on you, or baby steps, right? How many follow-up meetings would take until we close the deal, or like you have to think on the investor side and point of view that do this investor has a local entity that has an easy access to the local fund that can invest on your company, your startups, or your projects, etc. So you really have to think before making the offer, because if the offer doesn't make sense, communication cannot go along. So we're going to dig in deep into these kind of each processes of pitching, convincing, and obtaining your purposes of visit. Okay. So next slide. So there are 4 types of pitch, I believe. Handshake pitch, elevator pitch, demo day pitch, and follow-up meeting. Many would be very familiar with elevator pitch and demo day pitch. How many of you are familiar with handshake pitch? Raise your hand if you are familiar with the handshake pitch. If you're not, you can just stay there. All right. Okay, another question. Take a good guess how long elevator pitch would last. How long? How many minutes? How many seconds? Type it on the chat. 30 seconds. Pretty good time. 1 minute. Yeah, maybe 30 seconds to 1 minute. All right. How long would the handshake pitch last? Handshake pitch. 30 seconds. Less than 30 seconds. 10 seconds. Good. Usually a handshake pitch goes from 10 seconds to 12 seconds. It's literally a self-introduction when you first shake your hands with any random people you get to meet on the networking, which means you really have to have the pure essence of your business and the differentiation practice so that you can move on to an elevator pitch. Let's say I usually often introduce myself as I'm a dedicated South Korean accelerator dash incubator for foreign entrepreneurs in Korea to globalize South Korean startup ecosystem. We are running one and only co-working space dedicated for foreign entrepreneurs in Korea. And they'll be like saying, oh, how come it's one and only? Why foreigners in Korea? I got all the charms that people want to ask me, the follow-up questions, then I move on to the elevator pitch, right? And then, like, people are interested. Maybe you should join our demo day. Maybe you should have a 5-minute pitch with us. Maybe if you go well with the 5-minute pitch, then you move on to the follow-up meeting and say, giving an in-detail pitch text, right? So we're gonna dig in every single stuff over here. Usually, if it's an in-person session, I usually do a kind of breakout session that people doing handshake pitch to one another. And the pure essence of the handshake pitch is how memorable your core value proposition would be over time in the long term. So it usually includes who am I and what we do and what makes it special. And that's usually concludes with how cheaper, we're the only, or how faster, or most used, or some people just drop in numbers. But how many of you would be confident and prepared for the handshake pitch right now? Anyone, raise your hand if you're ready. Nobody? You guys are shy like Koreans? No one? Ah, Hanan, can you open up your mic and give us a quick handshake pitch about your product?
Sure. So my name is Hanan. I'm one of the co-founders of Capsule, and we are the one-stop shop for healthcare data in Africa.
Good, good. But you might need to add a bit more like precise differentiation factor. So before you visit or wherever you go, to be honest, you have to think about like what would be that pure charm that you can add into it, makes like a wow moments, right? So these are the things you might want to practice before you come to Korea or go to anywhere else. But still, it was a great short introduction handshake pitch, I would say. So yeah, you have to think of how cheaper, how faster, or what most used. Or if you're like a healthcare startup, cure rates. We're gonna be the, I don't know, next Novodisk of South Africa. Who knows, right? So like those kind of big ambitions can be also included. Now it's the elevated pitch. The reason that I'm going like step by step on every single pitch is because many people are often not really prepared. If you're not prepared, if I do these kind of workshop with the South Korean startups, I tell them to open up your timer, try to do a handshake pitch with the person beside you. And usually they spend about 30 seconds to 1 minute explaining about your products. And then I tell them, now open up your timer, try an elevator pitch. Usually straightforward, they speak for 5 minutes, explaining about all the technical details, how many patents has been approved, how many patents has been filed, how this engineering mechanism works, how this works, that works, and getting into an imaginary world that we're going to go IPO next year or something, right? So too much story, non-managed too much story often kind of get rid of the focuses, right? So I really suggest you to prepare each pitches, such as handshake, elevator, and also obviously mainly the demo day pitch. And follow-up meeting is totally different thing, but however, I really hope you to plan for it. So it's basically an addition to the handshake pitch. So who I am, what we do, what makes it special, and how we do it, the potential and the proposal, right? For instance, it could be, I do this, that, and because the reason that we can do or pull this technology is because we've been experienced in total 100 years as a team within this industry and technology. So our potential is that due to the market size that's increasing in this sector, we have this much market size forecasted until which year, and we're planning to have about 2% of that, and we already secured about 0.2. And our proposal is that we're looking for multinational partnerships, cross-border partnerships, so that we can have better results on our studies or better products or better exposure to the global audience. So like you really need to come up with a strict idea, core value proposition, plan and forecast. And most important thing is only us reasons, right? Why can it be done only by us, right? Only by us. This is so important because, like, for example, one of the most memorable startup that I met in Senegal was Pops. So Pops is a very alternative Google Map for delivery in Senegal, because in Senegal the address was not really accurate. So if I just follow the Google Maps, I often get lost, and especially when it comes to a delivery. Yes, you can get as accurate until the street name, but you can't really find which house is mine, right? So what they did was, like, they were knocking on like each doors, aligned all the address systems, and they have a better function than Google Maps. So that kind of brought us a lot of only us factor within their value proposition. So what are the comparative advantages that you guys have? You guys really have to think deeply. Especially when it comes to Korea, you have to understand what are the things that Koreans that do not have, but you guys can only have against the Korean founders. For instance, this time I brought in 5 startups from South Korea to Malaysia, and one of the startup was a healthcare startup that makes a digital medicine, and their inquiry was mostly this: in South Korea, clinical trial fees are so expensive. That's the problem they're experiencing. So they were asking the Malaysian ecosystem player, would there be any other alternative solution that I can have a clinical testing done in a much cheaper price? Then I'll be willing to pay, right? So the only us factor, everyone's looking for it. If he could get a clinical test in Malaysia in a cheaper price, when he gets to pitch in Korea, he'd be saying only us can get these kind of clinical trials done. Only us can accumulate such cheap data from Korea, right? In Korea. Because many South Korean healthcare startups are just raising expensive funds, giving out shares just to go through their R&D phases inside Korea, not looking for alternative options. So they could start building only us factor by finding a cheaper alternative and also a charm inside their pitch. And then during the proposal, you can go straight to the follow-up meeting, coffee chat. Shall we sit down and have some more chats? And as I said, you can come up with the offerings, such as partnerships, collaboration, etc., etc. So for this, you really need to think of how should I give time for them to speak and for us to understand, right? So asking questions after the elevator pitch or after the handshake pitch is also very important. So you should also think such questions as, which sector do you invest in, or which sectors are you operating in? Are you interested in joint venture, or are you interested in expanding your market? Which market is your main interest? Oh, I have a friend there. So like, you have to start communicating. You have to lead this handshake pitch and elevator pitch into a communication. So there's one of a Silicon Valley founder that I became a friend from a very random meetup. The thing is that I was at the San Francisco airport. I was trying to get a lounge, and my credit card was not working. And this guy came up and said, let me cover it for you. That's so generous, right? So I was like, okay, thank you. And then he came up while I was chilling. So what do you do? So I was telling him I'm doing this kind of startup, handshake pitch. And he said, oh, we're doing a payment solution for the B2B processes. Oh, and then we started communicating about what kind of products we were doing, what are the ecosystem in Korea, what are the ecosystem in San Francisco, ended up becoming a friend, and we're still in touch, right? So we're still collaborating, supporting one another. So making these kind of open conversation, how to ask questions are so important. And don't miss those kind of random moments and opportunities, because often those kind of random moments could lead to another opportunities. Okay. So next slide. So this is a slide that I can lecture for an entire day. So this is a data set from a dog sand Everyone familiar with DocSend? Yeah. So annually, DocSend does a survey to the founders that to allow them to get into their data set and see what kind of pitch deck has failed, what kind of pitch deck was successful, when it was sent to the investors, which slide was most focused, what are the patterns, etc., etc. So it's an annual data set. These days, it's much more harder to get. Until last year, they just opened up like PDF files about their research, but these days they're like much more in the website base. So if you want to search for it, you can easily search for it. I'm waiting for the next year's updates. The interesting factor is this: average pitch deck review time, the time has been decreased 20% than last year. The first time I started digging into their report was 2022. By then, they were spending like 3 minutes per deck, right? Now they're only spending 1 minute and 56 seconds. So it's decreasing by a year. What does this imply? That's the important lesson we have to learn here. What's the lesson we can learn? Why? Why is it decreasing, right? This means supply and demand has changed, right? Supplier number of fund suppliers are limited or decreased, but fund demand, the startup we're requesting for investment review has increased, right? And at the same time, the financial market is declining, especially the startup investment market, that they have to review the deals quickly since there are so many deals, and they have to be very precise on which startup to invest on. So it's not included on this deck, but in the past, they used to have about 3-4 meetings until they make like investment decisions. And usually the round phase, the time spent on the round per round was like 3 to 4 weeks. But now, on average time spent per round is 3 months. And in South Korea, average time spent per round is becoming 9 months, right? So you see the difference in supply and demand and how investors are becoming careful in selecting the deals, reviewing the deals, and making the final investment decisions. And now you can see the time spent on the successful pitch deck reviews. They spent slightly more time than the unsuccessful pitch deck reviews, which is 1 minute and 40 seconds. So your pitch deck has to be attractive enough and emphasize time distribution was mostly on competition, 88% more time spent than the average. And why now? And traction. So now you know where you have to give the killer slides, right? Most of the people believe, most of the founders believe, and sometimes even myself does that mistakes, is that we need to emphasize on solution. Okay, I got one question. Does that mean in Korea, time between first meeting and wiring fund is 9 months? Depends on the startup. Depends on the startup. I mean, if your product is so good, so attractive, and if they're feeling FOMO, they often, decide to invest within like 2 months. But like on average, mediocre startups, because like how many GPTs are we seeing on the market these days, right? If I review startups, annually I review about 300 to 700 startups, and I would give or take at least 40% are GPTs. We're GPT for what, GPT for that, GPT for this, right? So it means like for those kind of startups, if I have a slight intention to invest in, I would take a lot of time to evaluate them, right? So that could last like 9 months. So I may feel like, I want to invest, but I feel risky. I want to wait until your next quarter updates. Or sometimes, there is a regulation about to pass in the Congress. And if this regulation passes, I can't invest on you. Or I would invest on you. So people tend to waste times. And this year typically was very difficult because, okay, do you know how many elections happened this year? Only 2024 globally. How many elections around the world? Take a good guess. How many elections? Good guess. random number, 60. Oh, very close. 64. 64 elections this year, which means globally, most of the decision makers had to wait until the election result comes out. Yeah. So next year, many things will get faster than this year, I believe, because many things has been defined already. So depending on the circumstances, these kind of durations can really vary. But what I'm telling you is like depending on the circumstances, what kind of position you're in. Since Hanan, you're in the healthcare sector, usually the approval by the FDA, which region you guys have the license, is this legal here, is this legal there? That's also very important. Are you in the reimbursement scheme, or are you in the private investment scheme, or are you not included in the investment scheme? That also differs, right? So that kind of brings in a lot of review time, especially in the healthcare sector, in my personal experience. So if I get to move on, competition is very important. Why now? So important. Traction also important. Okay. So if you are trying to emphasize something, focus on competition, why now, and traction rather than your technical solution introduction. Okay. Because if your business seems to be profitable enough, investors will ask you to validate your technology, right? They'll be asking to you after the 5-minute pitch, how is this even possible? It's too good to be true. Unless you're like exaggerating, they'll be asking that. Okay, I see your team has a compatibility and has a ability to deliver such product and solution. But how does this work? I want to understand, because it's very good. This is a very good signal. So you need to bring that out by making an attractive pitch deck. That's the whole thing. You don't try to conclude your financial investment opportunity in 5 minutes. You try to make them feel attracted to your company in 5 minutes. That's your entire focus. All right? This is something you really have to take, because many of startups, they just pitch and say, I need a investment. That's it. They want to conclude. And then they just quickly pass by the questions. I need an investment. I'm so desperate. But as I said, it's not my problem, right? So you need to make it as attractive as possible to make an investment. So there are successful pitch deck and failed pitch deck. But if I show these kind of guidelines, many people would just try to copy and paste. Okay, first slide, purpose. Second slide, why now? Third slide, problem statement. But don't do that. Just please try to just review the guidelines. But most important thing is the flow and storytelling and convincing and attraction, interest that we can bring from the pitch. So you can mix up the order, but this is just a guideline. If you ever get lost building the pitch deck, this could help you, but I'm not saying this is a silver bullet to everything. Okay. All right. So now we're gonna unhatch every single part. First of all, first 3 pages. If I ever get to consult startups to build a pitch deck, these 3 slides is the most time spent for me. All right. So especially the purpose, especially the opener. So how we're gonna start with it? Start with a question. It's a pretty good way of doing a storytelling. Impactful number, I personally believe the best one. So like one of the startup I recently consulted, they've been pitching, they've been explaining about their products, and then on their revenue slide, that was my wow moment. I was not interested in their product. It was a perfume startup. Perfume, you can find it everywhere, and there are even better premium line perfumes. Why would I even care to review this startup, right? And then when I saw their revenue, that was my wow moment. And I was like telling them, guys, why are you delaying your wow moment so late? Move it to the front. Bring the attention from the first place. Make them be focused on your pitch for 5 minutes in a row. Don't make them fall asleep for the first 12 slides and then move on to the profit, revenue, get a wow moment, trying to recall what I missed out, right? So you need to grasp that attention from the first slice itself. So let's say their impactful number was that they were already having a 30 million US dollar revenue per year, and their corporate history lasted only 1 year. It's a big number, right? So let's say you said, I'll just follow their pitch. They were Korean, but if I tried to translate it, first they said, we are a company A that is building Korean perfumes in a very cultural scent that can bring a memorable moments in South Korean culture. That was their initial pitch opener, right? And I told them to switch it into 30 million. 30 million, not Korean won, not Japanese yen, US dollar. This is our first year revenue. We are a perfume startup from South Korea, amplifying South Korean culture, echo out the global ecosystem. Much more attractive, brings in the investors' attention. It's good if you have a strong revenue, yeah, right? But if you don't have a revenue, then there are many different ways to emphasize your attraction, right? What are your attractions? What are the attractions that you guys have? As I told you, you can say 99%. 99%. We have a 99% cure rate as our medicine, a pharmaceutical startup of this disease. Or you can say, for instance, 20% of South Koreans has diabetes or struggling with diabetes. And we have a cure rate of 80%. You know, this kind of impactful number brings in the attraction, and you can move on to why now, etc. Okay. When you are saying about why now, this is so also important. So in the 2018, 2017, there were crypto startups who were fundraising. And there were crypto startups who were fundraising on 2019 and 2020. Imagine the success rate of their fundraising activities. Who would have had a better chance, right? 2017 or 2019, right? So why now is pretty simple, right? So this is one of the reasons why you have to understand the local ecosystem, right? Let's say you're a air conditioner startup and you come to Korea during winter. Does that make a lot of sense? No. It's hard to sell. That case, it's very hard to sell. So why now? Momentum, market increase. It has to make sense, and it also has to be very attractive, right? For instance, as Hanan mentioned, he's a healthcare startup. I invest a lot on healthcare stocks. Why? It's an aging society, and we will see much more sick people than we did in the past, right? South Korea's per se, within next 5 years, no, within next 10 years, 40% of South Korean population will be over age of 65. South Korean median age is going to become like 50. Right now, our median age is like 42, right? So we got a lot more potential patients than the healthy labor forces. So this could become a pretty good why now moment because we're in an aging society and this is a huge issue. And then we can move on to the very specific problem statements, right? Okay, I understand it's an aging society. Yes, it is aging. So what's the big problem? You can easily move into that flow. If you get age, your bone structure gets weakened or formality gets weakened. You get to have a deformity. You get to lose hair, whatever the problem you get to stay. It has to connect with the purpose, why now, and problem statement. And the story should be also very important, right? When you are saying like your story, I think it's also a very impactful way. Many of social impactful startups starts with their own story. Let's say I was raised in an orphanage. This is an actual story that I had in the startup pitching. Or there was a startup who prevents STD, and it was a social impact startup, and she told her story as a victim and her struggle and how she overcame that struggle and now became a startup founder. So that was a really touching story that kind of brought up the attention as well. So it depends how you use the things that you have. You have to understand what you have, right? As a company and as a person, as a founder. So, yep, that's how purpose, why now, and problem statements should go through. So far, so good, guys? Any questions, just feel free to type it on the chat, okay? Solution slide. Easy explanation, right? I always tell them, just think I'm 7 years old and tell me, right? So like, how are you going to explain it easier than anyone else would do? Okay, so far so good. Many people in South Korea, most of the startups are tech backgrounds, engineer backgrounds. So they're very confident about their mechanical or tech details. But no matter how much they explain, I have no clue what they're talking about. Zero clue. Yes, for you, it makes sense, and it seems to be a very valuable solution, but I wonder how profitable is it going to be? And I just want to know how it works, and can anyone do it if they want to? Does it have any tech barriers or technical barriers, or is it patented? Is it not patented, or as a trade secret? Whatever it is, it's like very important component to explain things easily. Okay. So in that case, comparable tech case is very affordable way to dumb it down on the solution slide. So for instance, there is this South Korean development agency startup, but they're very unique and special. Why? Their job applicants can be only registered as a job seeker when they get to share their GitHub source codes. So it actually provides the validity of the projects they have written on the resume, because so many people are faking the resume with the other project records they used to have. Is it a good idea to consider using visuals? Using visuals are good. Using visuals are good. And explaining with verbal sentences are much better, to be honest. Using the process chart is also very efficient, but sometimes like putting in the text is also a crucial component, I would say. But if you see my slides, okay, I try to minimize the text, although it's a lecture note. As a lecture note, minimizing the text is insanely difficult, right? But I try to minimize the text as much as possible. For instance, I always keep the pattern. Font 40 for the title, second title, font 30, middle title, font 20, and something less, I go for 16, right? But when I consult pitch decks, I always keep the font 30. Font 30 for the title, I keep it like 50 to 60, and rest of the text, I keep it 30. If you keep your font in 30, your contents literally gets to be summarized. And even if you're using the visuals, if you keep your font 30, it will be like enough range, not giving too much complexity. For instance, this slide, look at this. It's simple. I'm using the visuals, handshake pitch, handshaking, elevated pitch, elevated image, demo day pitch, guy who's pitching, follow-up meeting, using the image. So like the image and the text messages are matching together, so it kind of soaks in your head much more easily, right? So if I just went through this slides without the forefront slides, it must have been much more complicated for you guys and hard to follow it up. Unless I need to explain such things in details like data, informatics, I try to keep the text as small as big as possible. So yeah, visuals are also a good case. When you are dumbing it down, usually if it's a 5-minute pitch, even if you dumb it down, you don't have enough time to explain about your technology. So you can just say it's such as it's the same idea with filtering water, or it's the same idea how car gets to be ran, but we just implemented into this one and we are patented. Or like you can just keep it very brief, use the case, and just drop in a strong differentiation factor. Nobody can do it, but only we can. And it's made cheaper. Or because, okay, one of my friend, he runs a e-commerce platform in Tanzania, and he's Korean. And his family owns a mining sites in Tanzania. So they have like mining sites, which means it has to come to the dock, right? Come to the port. So in interim of Tanzania to the port is a long range of drive, right? So truck goes empty to the mine and it gets full to come back, right? So when the truck goes empty, he felt the inefficiency, right? So he started an e-commerce platform, dropping off the product on the way to the mining site, right? That's how he initially started. And I was like saying, how can you do that? Because I own a truck, I own a mine, so I can be way cheaper than any other competitors in Tanzania, right? It makes sense. Like comparative advantage that only you can, but no one else can have. Or even someone could have, but it's going to be not affordable. So these kind of strong differentiation factor is so important. But sometimes your strong differentiation factors may not be good enough. So yeah, it has to be something that's very attractive, giving some wow factors, right? So try to check out how many slides you're using on the solution slides. And if you have these kind of factors, is it too complicated, or is it comparable? Or does it contain any strong differentiation factor, wow moments? Just try to review it before you complete your slides. At the end, I'll just drop in my LinkedIn or email address. So during your process of building pitch deck, if you want to ask me any comments, I'm definitely down for it. So just feel free to let me know, okay? Because like solution slide is the most difficult one. Business model, it could be easy. As I said, impactful number. It's a world of number. Cost efficiency against revenue. One of the Korean startup, I matched them with the biggest early stage venture capital in Saudi Arabia, and they really had a really good revenue, and they just passed the break-even point, right? So I told them, this is a really good deal. So I made an arrangement. They had a small follow-up meeting and pitch, right? So the investors said, hey, so can I see your financial statement, right? And they said, yes. And apparently, out of his revenue, 50% was coming from his product, 50% was coming from an R&D project given by the government. So, which means his revenue is not apparently coming from the superiority of the technology of the product itself. It was coming from the government subsidies. So the revenue efficiency, profitability is very vague. So they dropped the deal, right? So you have to be very clear and transparent on stating your revenue, realistic, don't exaggerate it, and also the cost efficiency. There was a very superior manufacturing startup in South Korea, but they failed. Why? The cost efficiency was so bad. To compete in the market, the product had to be cheap enough, but to build the product, it has to be expensive. The costs were too expensive, right? So you have to bring in a good number, especially the margins. If it's an NDA closure for the margins, just give us a rough range, right? Also, when you are saying like business model, some people say we're gonna make an exit in 2025. Good stuff. But if you say we're gonna make an exit in 2030, we're gonna get an FDA in 2029, just delete the too distant future, because nobody can predict even tomorrow, right? And if you're trying to predict or plan too further future, it looks like a scam, okay? So in business model, traction, competition, when you are dealing with these kind of core values of your profitability, you have to be very precise, you have to be very transparent and realistic, okay? Margins are the biggest attraction, I believe. So let's say you're earning like 1 million per year. Our net profit is this much. That kind of gives you the rough grasp of margins. And or you can say the repurchase rates, especially on the traction slides. If you don't have a customer yet, this is my personal suggestion. Go around the people and get an intent of purchase signed up, and ask them to pay a very small amount of money as a deposit. When the product comes up, you'll be the first person to get, and as a deposit, please pay us like $5 or $2 and intent of purchase. Then that becomes a data that you can have before you have a product and actually appeal to the investors. So on the traction slides, if you don't have a customer, that's a one way to, leverage it. If you do have a customer, more than anything, repurchase rate is so important. But if your product is something that is not really repurchasable, then you can just say our sales growth, or we are also making an extra revenue out of like maintenance cost. So you can make a very simple breakdown to show the traction rates. Most important things will come up on the next slide, but this would be one thing. When it comes to competitors, some startups puts down two small competitors, right? That when I say known competitor, it doesn't have to be Samsung or Google or Hyundai or Netflix, all right? It can be a competitor that we can easily find on Google search. That's good enough. Known competitor where we can check, these are the competitors. They're well established. They are active in the market. Some people line out competitor, OX, OX, O. We go into Google, try to find the competitor, cannot find it. Ask the founder again, and they'll be saying, oh, they're a startup in our ecosystem, and they don't have a website. Then how can I compare? How can I even see if it's a really competitive, right? So during the due diligence process, the reference checks are done very much in a stealth mode. So you won't really recognize people are asking about us or not. So you need to have a known competitor. Rarely investors will come and ask you that, hey, can you give me some info about your competitors? Rarely. They'll try to figure it out by themselves. So it has to be known enough competitor that can be easily found on Google, so that we can see how big is the market, how active is the market, so that even if you make a minor success, we can still get out of this market by making an exit, right? So it has to be convincing in that way. Easy way is using a positioning map, comparing yourself with the other competitors. That kind of stresses out differentiation factor, your positioning in the market, what is your unique value proposition, okay? Next slide is the finance and conversion rates. This is a, okay, we might have to erase that one quickly so people can see the QR code. If you have time, this is an Excel spreadsheet that I made for founders to calculate the rough customer acquisition cost, or the conversion rates, runways, burning rates, etc., etc. This is very helpful because by going through these kind of spreadsheets and figuring out your runways and figuring out your burn rates, you'll get to understand how much funding you need to request to your investors. And you can also start having some logics, what kind of proposals that you have to make, right? Because many South Korean startups would say, oh, we need a 30 million, we need a 3 million, we need 200K. And I would say, okay, why? Because we are gonna spend this much on the marketing, we're gonna spend this much on employment. Doesn't really make sense, right? Much more accurate way is that we have, let's say, burning rate of $20,000. Our runway is secured for the next 6 months. So we can go for around for another 3 months to be secure. And if we get 200K as a funding, that's going to secure us another 10 months of runway. But we're planning to achieve our KPIs by this because our customer acquisition cost is this much, and per dollar, we're acquiring this amount of customers. So after 10 months, our runway would be, including the profit, maybe roughly another 3 years, right? The convincing by the numbers, building up logics within these kind of customer acquisition costs, lifetime values, runways, burning rate is so important. On top of everything, burning rate, you have to calculate your burning rate. This is not commonly asked question in Korea, but burning rate is a very commonly asked question in the global investors ecosystem. So you need to calculate burning rate. And also during that process, this is not related to pitch deck, but if your burning rates, if you're calculating your burning rate, you get to find wasteful expenses happening inside your business operation, right? And you have to figure it out how to exclude that. What are the monies that's leaking? Where are the monies is being wasted? So let's say you've done a good pitch, you've done a convincing financial modelings and offerings, and when you are going to the follow-up meeting, you can say, oh, on that demo day, our burning rate was this much, but in between time, before our follow-up meeting, we diminished all the wasting or the over expenditures that we had, so our burning rate got lower, right? So our business operation became much more sufficient, our cost got lower, etc., etc. So you have to provide them updates in a very logical way. So these kind of financial part, conversion rate part is extremely important. Okay. Right. So I hope everyone scanned the QR code if they need one. Oops. Yeah. Okay. So this one I failed to translate it, but this is quite simple. Fundraising goals basically is all about request, right? I'll be very realistic. It will be nearly impossible to do a fundraising in South Korea, right? Nearly impossible. Very few, or most likely it will be tough to get a fundraising, but start from a baby step. You can't get everything in a one day or in a one singular business trip. For me, even in Malaysia, first time I came was just a small trip. Second time, another small trip. Third time, I finally got the deal. And this is my third time. It takes time, right? Especially when it comes to an investment, it takes even longer time. So you have to consider the needs of the investors first, right? Does this investor really want to invest on a foreign startups? Let's say no. Then what would be the way to bring out his interest to invest on us? Let's say you have to study about this investor's portfolio. Let's say one of the investors' portfolio company has a great interest in African ecosystem, and you can just reach out to him and say, we don't really look for an investment in this short-term business trip. We know it's impossible, but we would love to collaborate with your portfolio company B. And by collaborating with the company B, we can bring this much value to company B, and we can also gain this much value from the company B. And further on, if our company validates on your perspective, maybe we can start discussing about investment, or maybe we could expand to Korea and then become a much more eligible investment portfolio for your company, right? So it's all about trade-off benefits, right? Many people, like, okay, not many, all of the startups, I've seen 0 startups that are saying, don't invest in our startups. Everyone says, you invest on us, then you're going to have triple or multiple, we're going to become the next unicorn, or you're going to have 10 times, 10x revenue out of us within the next few years. Every % are gone in 3 years, right? So you have to understand it's a trade of value. You can't just say you're going to earn a lot of money. You have to build a very strong structure of a convincing logic and models. So you can start off from a partnership, or you can ask their needs. So what are you looking for? What are the things that I can help you? What are the things that we can start building a relationship? Wherever you go, this is how it works, right? Unless you have like $1 billion idea, right? And another thing is that many of foreign startups who are coming into Korea, usually, often, not many of them has a better product or better patent or stronger technology than existing startups in Korea. So to be realistic, starting off from a partnership is much more beneficial. And how to position yourself in the market has to be also very realistic to get any kind of investment or further collaborations. So yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty simple in this way. It's going to be pretty tough, but you need to search on many of Korean startups and investment portfolio of major investors in South Korea and try to read the market, right? Try to read the market, what kind of startup has been invested by whom, what are their operations, what are the Korean startups who are operating in my country, and who's their investor. Those kind of leads, okay? Just try to be realistic, try to follow back on the records. It will be pretty interesting if you start looking for Korean startups trading in Africa, because yes, very important. Yeah, because many of South Korean startups goes to Africa via KOICA projects. So KOICA has a CTS projects that has a grant program for Korean startups going to developing countries. So if you look for those kind of startups investors, that's going to bring you a lot of leads. Most likely, if you're in a social impact spectrum, MY Social Company is one of the major accelerator that rarely invests on foreign startups in Korea. So in Korea, cross-border deals are rarely happening, and MY Social Company has a record of investing on foreign deals, cross-border deals. So you might want to check them out and maybe make a pre-planned meeting or have a go through their portfolio companies. And yeah, again, non-financial approach, starting from a baby step, could be a much more fruitful in a long-term business planning. So yeah, now we're on the like very last slide already. I hope you have a lot of questions. The thing that you must prepare is LinkedIn, AngelList, and Crunchbase, because most of your companies may or may not have a website, but it will be very tough to have a top searching on the SEO. But if you leverage LinkedIn, AngelList, and Crunchbase, it can definitely help you coming up on the first slide when they try to search it on Google. This is so important. At least one follow-up meeting on site or pre-planned meeting before you arrive Korea. To do so, LinkedIn could be a good method, but you can also leverage Lunch Club. Very few people uses Lunch Club in Korea, but you can also use that. It's an AI matchmaking platform, so it automatically matches you with your own interest. Also, you can just reach out to me. Please download Kakao Chat. Kakao Chat. I'll just drop down the application name. Download Kakao Chat, make a Kakao account. Let me know, then I can maybe invite you to our community group chat that you can have some pre-planned meeting before arriving Korea. Also, align very specific goals before you visit Korea. What are the things that you want to achieve? How many partners, or how many contacts, or how many investors you want to be? You have to be very organized in the long term if you want to engage in a global business. Every business trip I go, I always set up these kind of goals, and every end of the business trip, I always line out on the Notion as a data set what kind of people I met based on their business card, contact, the company name, their name, position, etc., etc. Always make it into a data set so you can reach out easily. Yeah, and also, yeah, when you're coming to South Korea, especially when you're going for follow-up meeting, prepare business cards. business card is so much important, more than you think. Asian culture is always business card, not just showing them QR. It's Kakao Talk, yeah. I'm not sure how they put it on English on the Play Store, but it's Kakao Talk. Yeah, and Korean people don't usually use LinkedIn, so the easiest way is reaching people via Kakao, through communities, etc., etc. Maybe if you add me on LinkedIn, maybe I could make a shout out for you to have some pre-planned meetings. Okay. Yeah, hope you get to align specific goals, and I hope my pitch deck explanation was helpful. Please start asking me questions because I secured a lot of time for you guys to ask questions. Because one lecture cannot provide you a silver bullet to all the pitch deck you guys are about to write. So feel free to ask me questions. I am more than happy to consult your very unique needs. Yeah. Because I've been notified that you guys might get to ask a lot of questions. So, yep. Vivens, please open up your mic first, and then we'll move on to Sandra.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, I'm Vivens, and I'm based in Rwanda. We run an Africa's talent marketplace platform where companies come to hire and outsource African workforce to specialize across the digital careers. So my question is, you talked about that in Korea, the pre-seed round tends to be between 100K USD to 200K USD, and you didn't be specific on maybe the seed round range. But for me, my question here is, when you look at the Korean ecosystem, are many investors really willing to invest in pre-seed rounds or seed rounds or even other growth stages? That's one. Number two, do we have many angel investment communities in South Korea as well? So kindly give me the perspective. Thank you.
Okay. Where to start? South Korea has about 400 accelerators in Korea, which means we have about one accelerator per 100,000 people. So yes, we have a lot of pre-seed stage investors in South Korean ecosystem, and their willingness is pretty strong. Because we provide tax incentives for the syndicate LPs for joining in the accelerators fund. So that's like one of the major reasons. The thing is the Koreans' appetite on investing on foreign startups, it is increasing, but by very few players in the ecosystem. As I mentioned, like NY Social Company, maybe YN Archa, Korea Social Investment. Actually, one of the way that you can reach out to is maybe reaching out to Korea Africa Foundation. They also have a list of mentors or potential investors who might be interested in investing in foreign startups, like such as African startups. But also, I'm often joining Korea Africa Foundation as a mentor for African founders in Korea and Korean founders who are interested in going to Africa. So those are one of the channels to find the most relevant investors, mentors, or possible partners. Did this answer your question? No? Good. Okay, I'll consider that a yes and move on to Sandra. Sandra, please open up your mic and please feel free to shoot your question.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My question is around language. Would it be beneficial if you modified some of the content in your pitch deck to suit the Korean language in the room, would that be helpful and give you a lot, I would say, like give you an edge to your pitch if you translated the content a bit, the in-text part? Would it be
Okay,
necessary?
maybe, but maybe not. The thing is, like, if you're pitching, use your pitch deck in English, but if you're sending out emails, send them 3 versions: Korean version 15 slider, English version 15 slider, and about 30-page detailed tech description in English. Okay, so like the thing is, when I bring Korean startups to abroad, they overly try to localize. So once they use ChatGPT or something to translate their pitch deck in Portuguese, which they have no idea what's written on the pitch deck. He himself will be pitching in English, and when the question comes for a certain slide, he was murmuring because it was all in Portuguese, which he does not speak Portuguese, right? So these kind of accidents could happen. So my best suggestion is, when you are pitching, please present the English pitch deck. When you are approaching for follow-up questions or follow-up meeting, send them Korean 15-pager, English 15-pager, and 30 pages with detailed description. That would be my best suggestion. Good? Did that answer your question?
Yes, yes, you did. So I was struggling to unmute myself.
No worries, no worries. It's okay. Yep. George, you've been waiting in line.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Apologies, I came a bit late. Hopefully, I'll catch up from the other participants on what you shared earlier. But my question revolves around what you had mentioned with the partnerships. We're based out of Nairobi, Kenya, and we're in the diabetes technology space. So we do have a hardware and software component. And for us, we've sort of decided to forego the whole investing approach, approaching investors directly. We would rather go the partnership route. I think that's really a strong entry position for technology such as ours. And what I wanted to know specifically, we've had a few medical device manufacturers that we've identified in our technology. So they're not doing exactly similar technologies, but so for our device, it's a diabetes patch. It's a wearable patch for diabetics to monitor their blood sugar levels. And we've identified 2 or 3 insulin manufacturers or insulin pump manufacturers in South Korea. We were looking at structuring a partnership deal where our device and theirs sort of are combined into a platform, and we offer the market a combined solution. And so that's what we've been thinking as partnership structuring approach. Is that something you have encountered before, even if it's not with a similar technology? And how successful would you suggest an approach like that would be if we were approaching a manufacturer or a company based out of Korea? Thank you.
All right. Okay. That's a deep question.
Yeah,
when it comes to,
I hope I was clear with
yeah. Okay. I've seen cases. The formats are pretty typical in 2 ways. One is joint research. So you propose a joint research together. So you share clinical data that could amplify the set of data to be much more convincing. That's one way. Combining with university could be very efficient because many academic research centers are seeking for international thesis approval in journals. So yes, having an international data also definitely helps. Joint venture format is also possible, but giving them an opportunity to set up a joint venture in Kenya would be pretty much interesting opportunity for them as well. But the thing is, to offer such kind of joint venture type of let's say business expansion opportunity for Korean companies, what would be very important is that the insurance structure in Kenya and how does this payment method gets to be operated? How big are you operating in the Kenyan medical market and also the surrounding Swahili countries? What are the expendable regulatory consensus amongst the Swahili countries? And healthcare insurance, like how many medical tourists coming in? Because South Korea is losing population, many healthcare companies and startups are also seeking for other markets, right? So, I mean, there are definitely an opportunity for that. And number two, if you're seeking for direct investment, what is really important is that where is your entity? Because most of South Korean cross-border funds are often located in Singapore or Delaware or Cayman, but mostly in Singapore. So most likely, if your company is established in Singapore, it would be much more efficient for them to review your company and also to invest. But that would not only open up doors to the Korean investors, but definitely to the international investors. So I hope this addressed your question pretty well. And for you to have such kind of partnerships, really, you might want to reach out to the exact company that you've been looking for directly. It will be very helpful.
Thank you. At least that helps me understand how to sort of approach that that sort of triaging phase when we're in the courtship phase of the conversation. But thank you so much for that.
Thank you. All right, Douglas.
Sorry, Rizal, before Douglas comes in, can I just ask a follow-up from what George has asked? So how does he protect his technology when he's approaching these manufacturers?
Well, best way is to have a PCT, to be honest. But if you are having an NDA with the Korean company, and when you are signing up an NDA or MOU with any kind of manufacturer, mediation territory is the key when you are reviewing the contracts, okay? Even the NDA. So let's say they have breached your technology, and if your NDA is stating that the mediation and the compensation authority will be territorially located in South Korea, and that's going to be kind of safe way for you to retrieve the technology or be compensated for the breach that has been made or make a legal statement, although it might get to cost. But however, like if you state it as Kenya, then yes, it could be advantageous for you to win the case. But in the same time, Korean people would just give up Kenyan market that way, right? They say, okay, then we give up Kenya. But if your mediation territory is designated as Korea, then they have to go to Korean court and Korean mediation center and make their statements. And if they lose, they have to pay for their dues. So, or you can also state it as UK. London Mediation Council is also very strong. Those kind of market, you don't really want to give up and flee from it. That's gonna limit you in many visas. So for breaching technologies from different countries, lose a lot of credits in the ecosystem. So yeah, you have to be very strategic on that one.
I agree. Thank you, Riz. I hope that's helpful for you, George.
Okay, Douglas? You can open up your mic.
Thank you for the presentation. So mine is on the relevance of our technology with regards to the Korean market. So we are an agri-tech company where we help farmers easily detect crop pests and diseases, and at the same time they're able to do soil diagnostics, and all this is reported on their phones. So we have a device, and the data that we get from the device, we combine that with satellite imagery for improved accuracy. So as you've mentioned, listening from your presentation, there's a high demand or a high regard for healthcare startups. So how relevant or how when we are approaching the market, how should we approach it in terms of our presentation? Because I'm sure what could be ailing us is not what is ailing farmers in South Korea. So how do we, what is the approach that we give when we are doing the presentation?
Can you come back with your product description a little bit more? I want to understand a bit more. Can you explain me about your product a little bit more? Yeah.
Okay, so what we do, we have developed a device, an IoT device that is put in the farms. So once something like this one is, so we have this device, and we are assembling these ones. So we have this device that is solar powered. So we put this in the farms. So it helps farmers detect, so the device detects crop pests and diseases. And before the naked eye can spot them, then this reports this to the farmers via their phones, via an SMS or via a mobile application. So for us to improve the accuracy of this data, we combine that data with satellite data analytics and be able to get an accuracy that is more than 90%. But at the same time, the farmers are also able to do soil diagnostics to understand the health status of their soils. So they're able to capture the soil parameters. At the same time, they're able to know the exact inputs that they're supposed to put in their soils. So the inputs, these includes pesticides, fertilizer, and water, and all the other inputs. Yeah.
So you want to know how to pitch your ideas in Korea, right?
How relevant? Because that is very relevant in our space. Because what is ailing most of the African farmers is crop pests and diseases. We are still we're still doing our research to see what's the major problem with Korean farmers. So mine is for us to be relevant to the investors. How do you approach it? Like you said in your early presentation, you said of this perfume company that what they should have put first is their revenues. So for us, what should come first? How do you approach it?
First of all, if you're coming to Korea, this is the company that I delegated to Malaysia this time, and they're much more focused on the disease prevention of livestock, but they also have a fertilizer project with Korea Corporation to export it to Africa, and they need a counterpart in Africa. So if you partner up with these kind of companies, then this could give you a comparative advantage, appealing to the Korean investor that we already have a partner in Korea and we are already doing business with them, or because they need a consumer on the Africa side. So like building a strategic relationship in such way could really appeal. And when you were saying like, let's say, detecting the soil data, shooting from the satellite, coming to the mobile phone, yes, it's good. I think it's pretty viable, might be viable in Korea. The problem that comes along with is that language, right? What kind of language UI that you guys can provide, and also what are the variations? Because like when I say like localized, South Korea farming industry these days, it is usually not the Koreans who are doing the farming in the agriculture industry. So these days, more farmers from like Central Asia, Thailand, or Vietnamese were working on the front end of the agricultural industry, so that if you say, we provide our data set and analytics and the alerts about your farms via mobile in like 4 different language, Korea and Thai and Vietnamese and Kirill, maybe. Like those kind of localization factor could really bring in some interest, right? And your comparative advantage should not come from like Korean agricultural industry as well. You should also prove that we already have a good enough traction in our country. Our local domestic market is very solid. And now we're trying to expand to Korea, and the because is so important. let's say South Korean Ministry of Agriculture is running a massive project in the sub-Saharan region to jointly build a rice belt, massive rice belt with Senegal and Ghana or something, and like 3 different countries, right? And that could become a good reasoning, right? Why do you expand to Korea? Because South Korean Ministry of Agriculture is having a cross-border partnership between African ecosystem, agricultural ecosystem, and Korea, or like many Korean farmers has came into our country to develop extensive agricultural range in our country. So we are trying to make it very usable in Korea as well. We already have Korean customers. Like, reasoning is so important. Why your product has to come into Korea when you're appealing to investors. Yeah. And basically you already have a solid market in Africa. I think your product is very viable, and I really want to arrange you an introduction with the SimplyCare bio that I just shared you on the screen, because I think that could bring in some kind of immediate interest of partnership. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Hope I answered your question correctly, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other questions? I think I can go for another 1 or 2. Meanwhile, I could share my context. Please feel free to drop any questions. I'm more than happy to facilitate. That's my WhatsApp contact, LinkedIn, and everything. Yeah, Hanan, please. Yep, Hanan, please open up your mic.
Hey, sorry, I was just having some issues there. Thanks, Risa. Great presentation. Really insightful. So, I wanted to ask, what do you think is the best way to follow up after an initial meeting? Let's say you've met up with a potential partner or investor, and they request to send through your deck and more information. Is it best to send via Kakao Talk, like send a PDF of your pitch deck? Is it best to follow up by email? Hey, what do you think is the standard procedure for following up in Korea?
Okay, all right. That's a good question. You know what? I'm just gonna demonstrate it simply. Share my screen. Just trying to reshare the screen. Okay, I'm just gonna show you how Koreans usually write. Let's say title, always say Capsule Ltd. Follow up for from demo day, December 4th year. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. Here are summary of our proposal for company or request for follow-up meeting via Zoom or in person. And you can say this. Let's say you're going for a proposal, possible collaboration with your portfolio company. Share cooperative data sharing between two different ecosystem, and it can go on and on and on, right? And then look forward to your response and best regard, right? And then you kind of bolded this one, and like you can also I personally in Korea, we try to make it brief as possible, right? So we put this into a link, like your Calendly link, and you attach the files, and these could be the also included saying like attached file is a briefing about this, that. Please review it. Feel free to let me know. And that's it. You have to make it brief as possible. That's South Korean style. And this is like a typical format. Very memorable. I'm just demonstrating for you.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, this is how to avoid make you look like an advertisement in Korea. You know. Okay, I had a question on the chat. Are you familiar with KOTRA, the commercial section of Korean Embassy? How might one best leverage their support in prepping for the trip? Fun fact, they my support might help, but practicality is in question. You know, it's embassy and KOTRA. It's a bureaucratic space. They will do what they have to do, not in much of a practicality of your precise need. If you're just spray and pray, it usually doesn't really work. I'll share you a couple of African founders that are quite influential in South Korea. Maybe those kind of people could help you out. Having some similarity. Like just reaching out to these kind of people who's already in the ecosystem could be helpful for you guys to really understand their experience as an African founder on the Korean soil. See, KOTRA will never do this. Neither do the embassy. I'm just trying to be very practical. These are African founders in Korea, very active in the ecosystem. Reach out to these guys and say, hey, I'm visiting Korea. I want to learn more. Would there be any potential partnerships? What are the things that I can do to find leads in Korea, et cetera, et cetera? Like reaching out to the existing founders in Africa would be very helpful. Yeah, I'm just trying to be very practical for you guys, where to reach and what are the things that are possible for you. So yeah, I hope this answered your question. And Dahlia Laz, please open up your mic and feel free to ask me a question.
Hi, Rizu. Thank you so much for all the insights and sharing all of this information. I just have a very quick question. My platform is an interior design and furniture platform in Egypt. It's one of the pioneers in Egypt. So I would like to know if you have, if you know founders who's in this industry, the interior design, architecture, furniture industry in Korea. Maybe I could reach out to them, you know, like see what potential collaboration we can do.
Okay. Do you do interior design in Egypt right now?
Yes, we act like a design agency, a community collaborative platform. So we have like 2,000 interior design. I'm an architect myself. I practiced that for 12 years. But, and we have verified manufacturer because the market is very scattered and people don't know where to go. Our platform is their one-stop shop, so they can actually come and we recommend them who to work with. But we are like in the middle. We're like doing the process to make it like more seamless experience for that in the sourcing, procurement, and we have several products. One is to find the designer. Two is to source through our platform. And we're using digital transformation so we can so it could be easy for people to do that.
Yeah, I just typed it on chat. I think it's also a delegate that I brought into Malaysia. He's working in a modular construction business. He already have clients in Korea. They have a very similar technological approach to the modular construction. You are much more of a version in the interior design, and he will be the construction design part. So I think it could be a pretty good match. South Korean interior design market is pretty. We have like 2, 3 dominant conglomerate players who are overruling the market, and rest are just very small competitors. And yeah, it's quite hard to find interior design companies that could be familiar with startup realm. So I think best way is reaching out to this dude and trying to find a collaboration point would be very, very sufficient.
I actually did a research. There's a platform who just raised funds called Interior Teacher. They are in Korea.
Uh-huh.
So I don't know if you know them or not, or if you're familiar.
Sorry, I hope I did.
We'll reach out. But
Okay.
thank you for the insight.
Also, yeah. In South Korea for the interior design platform, best one is they call it O House in English, and in Korean this is the website. Yeah, you might want to check them out on the Crunchbase. They're the biggest one. They're the unicorn in the interior design space. So I'm not sure if they would respond, but it's a place where you can also set up your contents inside the community. So yeah, could be something.
Because my type of platforms, there's a lot of platforms like us. Alibaba, they acquired them. So maybe this will be a potential to know someone and we build a relation and we see how, like they can work with us in the future.
Yeah, I think this is pretty much that I can provide within my knowledge, like my friend and this platform. I hope it was helpful.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, anyone else? Okay, so maybe it could be a good timing to wrap it up, Precious. I mean, it was a pleasure having a lecture and also having a bit of a Q&A session with you guys, get to know each other, sharing context. It was very helpful. Please don't hesitate to reach me out. Although I'm pretty busy, I'll try my best to respond to your inquiries, try to help your journey in South Korea, and beyond. All right, so feel free to reach me out. Thank you so much, Precious. I think it's a good moment. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Rizzo. That was an excellent session. And I took some notes, so I was very engaged. I've got my notebook here. So we are so grateful. And I think one thing that you have said that we also need to emphasize is the pre-planning. It is essential to pre-plan and engage with those potential partners or investors ahead of time. So I also just want to stress that, and also just to say, we have planned a few visits or a couple of visits. So we'll be sharing the names of the companies as well with you. That will also give you an idea in terms of the companies that we'll be visiting. But yeah, Rizzo has also shared generously his WhatsApp number, his LinkedIn profile. So feel free to reach out to him. If you decide to revise your pitch decks, send it to him, ask him for advice, and yeah, he'll do his best to try and assist you. And we also look forward to seeing you. You said the 4th and the 5th, possibly? Cool. All right, thank you so much, guys. We'll see you again, I think, on the 13th. We also have another Korean speaker who will be speaking to us as well on the 13th. So we'll be sending more information to you in the coming days. Don't miss the session. I think we've got about 3 or 4 sessions to go. So please do not miss any of them. They're extremely important. They're extremely crucial, as I'm sure you saw with this one as well. So thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye, Rizzo. Thank you. Cheers.